Well, hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Straight Outta Prison podcast. My name is James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And I am Haley Jones, and this is his story that has now become a part of my story.
So in the last episode, we went through the process of coming back to Sweet Home, Alabama, facing time in Montgomery County Jail, and then my unlikely encounter with Jesus and getting saved.
Yeah, after coming off the highest of high, thinking you were going to get bailed out, and then the lowest of low, finding out, no way, Jose. And then, you got saved, and then you were still looking at some pretty hefty time, 10 years and some other charges in other places, but your mind, your head was in a good place.
Yeah, no, I was actually looking at like 3 20-year sentences, but then I ended up getting a 10-year sentence with time served. So with time served, I had already done like almost 4 years. So depending on the Alabama good time, like I had no idea how their good time worked. Depending on that, I could be home, in less than a year in my mind. And then I had something had changed on the inside of me, and it's like my mom and my granny and people were like, you should be a little more concerned and worried, and I was like, I'm not. I'm good. Like, God has a plan for my life, and you'll see. You just don't understand. So
it just shows that everything's relative, because I think you said last time, you said you were headed off to prison and you were excited about it because you were coming out of the jail. Yeah. But like, in what world would I ever say, I'm going to prison and I'm excited about it?
Well, you're excited. You're excited to be getting out of jail. Like, jail was rough. I mean, especially jail in Alabama. If you're going to get in trouble, go do it in somewhere else. Don't do it in Alabama. Alabama is rough. But it was fall of 1996. I was full of faith and hope and expectancy, and I just felt like, my life has changed. I'm better. And I was headed off to Kilby.
Kilby is the name of the prison.
Well, no, when I went to prison in Florida, it is a prison, but we talked about the reception center I went to in Florida was Lake Butler.
Oh, yes.
So Kilby is the Alabama version of Lake Butler. The only difference is in Florida they had 3 reception centers, north, central, and south, and in Alabama they only have 1. So basically the state of Florida incarcerates a whole lot more people, but they take their stuff a little bit more serious, too. So it was the same as that. I didn't have the kind of fear that I had going the first time because I felt like I'd already been through that. And also had heard, Kilby's not that big a deal as long as you're doing what you need to do. So
was that true when you got there?
I think the first thing that struck me about Kilby was it was like some kind of a weird, like, time warp. Like, this was 1996, and it was almost like it took me back to when I was a little kid in the 70s when we would travel from Atlanta to Phoenix City, Alabama. It was before they didn't have the interstate system built there yet. Like, you couldn't travel from Atlanta to Phoenix City on an interstate, so you had to go through all these back roads. You would just be so aggravated with the long trip, especially as a little kid. And you'd finally get there, and it would be like, we're here, and all you would see is like red dirt and steel and cotton mills, and because that was basically what it was. And there was something about that when we put up at Kilby that reminded me of going to Phoenix City as a little kid. Like, we're not in like the present time anymore. We're going back, at least 50 years. But it looked like that. A lot of red dirt, steel.
What's that, like the Wizard of Oz? We're not in
Kansas
anymore.
Not in
Kansas anymore.
Yeah, so but it was kind of like that, and then it wasn't as scary as Lake Butler had been, but it was the same process. They take you in there, they take all your clothes, look in all your crevices, and make you bend over and all that stuff.
Oh, that's the worst part. It sounds like to me.
Well, it is, but you get used to it. I mean, it's what they do. They do that quite a bit. Then they shave your head, make sure you shave really good. I remember the first thing I noticed was like they had like a weird, like a straight, not a straight razor, but a razor that was like a razor blade stuck on the end of a pole. I was like, what? How do you shave with this? Like, I'd never seen.
Why was it stuck to the end of a pole?
No, it was like an old-timey, like 50s man's razor. It was like one of those big, thick razor blades that you screwed onto the top, and then you had to figure out how to shave with it.
Oh,
It wasn't like a disposable razor or anything that, that I was ever used to, and, late 80s when I started shaving. And I just remember it cut my face up pretty bad. I didn't know how to use it. Then they shave your head, take your picture, do all that stuff. And then here, they threw like the powder stuff on us to make sure we didn't have bugs. And you go through all that, but it was just much quicker, easier. It was like they weren't trying to humiliate you like they were at Lake Butler. They were just trying to get you through. So they fill you up. One of the major differences, I guess, that I noted was in Florida, we wore blue uniforms, and in Alabama, everything was white. And there's something about the white that felt a little more, I don't know if it was clean or...
You probably thought it felt more clean.
Well, no, the material, it felt like it was like softer, like cotton. The ones in Florida, they were like rough fabric. But anyways, they processed us in. We got in. They put you in an orientation dorm, same as they did in Florida. Again, I was just... Everywhere I went at Kilby those first couple of days, I felt like I was like in a movie, but it was a movie that was from like when Ronald Reagan was acting. Like it was not anything, there was nothing modern. Everything was like old and decrepit and just like, I don't know, it was just like a time warp.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we got through that part. They do the same thing at Kilby they did at Lake Butler. They give you tests and they physical, mental, all the things, and then they classify you. So
what does a mental test look like?
Like you get, they're all kind of like bogus, but they do like just to test your aptitude, make sure you can spell, read and write. Then there's like some psychological stuff you have to go through to make sure you're not crazy, because they have a place for crazy people. And then they ask you just a battery of questions, and they put you through just a process to classify. Classification means that you're here, you're going to prison, we've got to classify you so we know where to send you.
Okay.
So, there's 15, 20 camps in Alabama. There's like 60, 70 in Florida, so they have to figure out how to go about that. In Florida, I was classified as a youthful offender, so that kind of narrowed it for me. In Alabama, I was not classified as that. They had me classified as a violent criminal.
Oh, wow.
So I was classified to go to a max camp, and there are 3 max camps in Alabama. One is West Jefferson, which is Donaldson Correctional Facility. One is St. Clair, which is right above Birmingham. And then there's one down south is Atmore, and that's where they actually, people that have death sentences, that's where they kill them and stuff.
Wow.
So I was going to one of those 3 places.
So where did you go?
Well...
Or get sent?
Well, they classified me to go to St. Clair, so that was what they told me I was going to St. Clair. So I got through that process. It lasted 2 or 3 days, and they, while you're at Kilby, they keep you there until you go to your permanent camp.
Yeah.
And then if you're lucky, you get tapped to be a permanent party at Kilby. Basically, you serve your time at Kilby, but you're working like in the laundry, in the kitchen, or in classification or something, helping other guys coming through there. And that was later on, I would pray I could get like permanent party at Kilby, but obviously I did not. But they put us out in, there was like 4 or 5 dorms. There was the one that I got assigned to, from the outside, it looked like a Sam's Club or Costco. It was humongous. And on the inside, it looked the same. It looked like we're in the middle of Sam's, but just with bunks instead of rows of merchandise. And I wasn't really scared. I didn't know anybody. I had been conditioned to how to handle myself in prison, and it just didn't seem like it was going to be that difficult. I remember they gave us jackets, and in Florida, the jackets they gave us were like real jackets. These jackets they gave us were like made out of like pillowcases or something, so they were like, it was just weird. The whole thing was just weird. I settled in, unpacked my stuff, and probably the biggest thing that I got excited about was they had popcorn. And I know that sounds crazy, but like when you go years and years without something, like I hadn't seen popcorn in like 4 years by this time. And they sold like the little microwave bags of popcorn on the store, on the commissary. Uh-huh. And then you could put it in the microwave and you could have popcorn and you could smell it everywhere. Everybody was popping corn, eating popcorn. And I was just so excited for that popcorn. The best popcorn I ever ate. And then I think I was there a day, maybe 2 days. not much longer than 2 days. And they came to me in the middle of the day, and they said, inmate Jones, pack it up. You're going to lockdown. And so,
Lockdown.
yeah, that's what they don't really, when they tell you to pack your stuff, you just pack your stuff. They don't have to tell you anything. But Alabama's a little more, like they would try to talk to you a little bit more because they're trying to keep riots and stuff down. Whereas in Florida, they would just tell you to shut up. So I was like, lockdown, like I haven't done, like, am I in trouble? I haven't done anything. And they said, well, come on up here, the Sarge will explain it to you. So we got, packed up my stuff, and, I'm walking through the camp thinking, I didn't do nothing wrong. So this is some kind of mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only been here for 3 days by that time, or a week, I can't remember. I'd only been in general population for 2 days or a day and a half, something like that. So I was just confident that they made some kind of a mistake. They had the wrong guy, the wrong name. And we walk up there, and they're telling me, the Sarge looks at me and says, we're putting you in the lockdown where they put the people with the life without parole sentences. So I was like, I don't have no life without parole sentence. I've got a 10-year sentence. That's all I got. And he said, well, the DA in Shelby County, you have a pending case there, and he is seeking life without parole against you. So that changes your classification. We have to put you in special population. And I think I almost passed out. Like, life without parole, like, what is that? I mean, I don't even know what that, for what does that mean? And then he explained, like, the 3 strikes law. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, tell me about that.
It was, most recently, like in 2020, that they reversed all that stuff.
Just in 2020?
Well, maybe it was last couple years, yeah.
So what is it?
It was the Bill Clinton, Joe Biden crime bill they came up with in the 90s. Was basically, if you commit 3 felonies, then you get a life without parole sentence. So it was called 3 strikes.
No matter what.
3 strikes, you're out. 3 strikes, you're out.
Wow.
And, I would see that later on, the effects of that. Like, I knew a guy, Mr. Johnny, he was an old black man, and he had a life without parole sentence for stealing a toolbox off the back of a truck because he had 2 priors. He was from Mobile, and they gave him life without parole. And when I met him, he'd been locked up, forget how long, but just
Is that upsetting to you?
Yes.
I mean, I can almost see you getting upset just talking about that, or talking about Johnny, I guess.
Well, no, I love Mr. Johnny. He was a good guy. He was an older black guy, and I think eventually they did something to help him, but just the mere fact of having that on you. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna die in prison because I stole a toolbox off the back of a truck. And not that he was not wrong, he was committing a crime, but like that kind of a sentence don't fit that kind of crime. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but for me, my charges were armed robbery, so it actually did fit mine.
Right.
Because they were trying to keep that off the streets.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to do.
Okay, so really quick, you said they were sending you to lockdown and then special population. You may have said this before, but what exactly, really quick, is special population?
So a special population is you have like people that have a death sentence.
Okay.
And I had never seen things like this in Florida. I was just a youthful offender.
Okay.
But I remember my first or second day at Kilby, they cleared the halls. And when they clear the hall, they just holler at you to get out of the way. Like you have to go in a door or whatever to get out of the hall.
Uh-huh.
And they were bringing a guy down that had so many chains on him. I'd never seen anything like that. But he like rattled when he walked. And then some of the inmates were yelling out, "Dead man walking." And it scared me. And so I asked somebody, like, what are they talking about? And they were like, oh, he's got a death sentence. Like they're taking him to death row. And I was just like, well, isn't that mean to be like, it's awful. Like to be hollering dead man walking out. Like, why would we do that? Like that's not funny. But so that was one classification. The second classification in Alabama was life without parole, because we have a lot of people in our Alabama prisons that are sentenced to life without parole. And when you're sentenced to life without parole, you have your AIS number, and then it has an X on the end. So the X on the end just means you're dead. I mean,
It means you're not coming out of prison before you die.
no, you have to die in prison.
Yeah.
So there are people with life
So
sentences
those
that get out in 20 years.
Those two types of people that you just described are the people that go to this special population.
Then there's other special population. There's sex offenders. It's hard to keep sex offenders in general population because they kill them. And then anybody that was former law enforcement, or I think like attorneys, certain kind of attorneys and law enforcement, they're a special population. Because again, if they let them out in general population, somebody finds out, then they'll kill them. So they're a special population. But my special population was, Kilby was actually a medium security camp, and because they had put that life without parole stipulation on me, that made me like a max. My security goes to maximum. So they lock you down. You just have to stay locked down. You just figure it out.
So basically, they were putting an X at the end, like you were going to die in prison. Bottom line.
Well, no, you have to be sentenced by a judge for that.
Okay, but he was trying to do that. The judge was trying to.
Not the judge, the district attorney.
Or the district attorney.
So I had a case in Shelby County that I had already gotten started. I had my prison sentence and all the stuff in Florida that I had completed except for the probation. Then I got two 10-year sentences ran concurrent in Montgomery. And then I had an outstanding case in Shelby County, which I had already, got the process rolling on that. But when the DA saw my priors, it was real popular in the 90s. Like if you have somebody that commits multiple crimes, to put that on them. I mean, it was popular all over the United States. But I think one of the things happened with that is what turned us into a prison state, because they locked up so many people. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay, so back to, they came and got you, told you were going to lockdown because you were going to special population because the DA had requested life without parole.
Yes, that's what he was seeking.
Okay, so from there.
So I didn't know what to do. It was like a shock, and then like just trying to figure it out. But then when they walk you back there, it's like it's right in the middle of the camp there, and it's this long, skinny row of just cells with white bars, and the cells were very small. It was there was a bunk, like a bunk where you put your mat, and then right next to it there's a toilet and a sink, and then that's the width of the cell. And then there's a little table at the end of the bed, and then everything else is just bars. And it's 24-hour lockdown. They let you out like 3 times a week in handcuffs to go take a shower. You can't even go out and use the phone. They actually bring the phones to you. So just the fact of being there was one thing, but then like I was like 3/4 of the way down. So there was probably like 25 cells there. Just walking by and looking in and seeing the people, and it was just like, it just reeked of like hopelessness and nothing good. Like it, and more than like seeing the conditions of like the little sardine can that they were going to put me in, was like seeing the look in people's eyes. It was like a dead look. Like, hey, I'm dead. Oh, look, here comes another one. He's dead too. This is kind of how it...
Depressing.
Oh, God. It was I've never seen anything like that on earth.
So, I mean, were you scared? Because you came from such a place of hope, and then to find out this and to see these people and the looks in their eyes, I mean...
It was very sobering, and I was scared, but at the same time, I just, like, I couldn't... The first day, I couldn't process it in my mind. Like... This ain't happening to me. But then, you get in there, you don't have anything to do. There's no like TV, there's nothing to do except for like read, write letters, and listen to radio. And it was like there was an unmistakable, whatever had changed with me on the inside of me. I guess that had been like 4 or 5 months before that in the Montgomery County Jail. It had not left me. So Jesus was with me. I mean... And there was no denying like his presence was with me, but it was so hard to like believe in that, and then have your eyes and your ears and what you see is not that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like nothing around you.
So what I saw was like death. Like these people are trying to kill me. And I mean, they weren't trying to like give me a death sentence, but basically if you get an X behind your number, that's a death sentence. Like you ain't going nowhere. There's nothing for you. Just figure it out.
I can't imagine.
Well, now later on I would meet a lot of guys like that. But at this time I'd never been exposed to anything like that. I think when I was in prison in Florida, I knew I had 20 years. That was the most I'd ever even heard of. Like this was just for me, it was just like a cold, harsh splash back into reality. And then, I called my mom, and like the way her response to it was, she was, of course, freaked out and crying and screaming and doing all the things. But then it was like something she said to me. It's almost like when you're down, like the people that are closest to you can like get at you the worst. And she wasn't saying this like to come at me or my mom is for me, you know what I'm saying. But she just was like confused, and she basically said, seems like when you didn't pray and do all this Jesus stuff, everything was better for you. Like ever since you started all this praying and Jesus stuff, like everything just seems like it's just getting worse. And I was, like, that
Things that make you go,
No, I mean, but it was kind of like, But later on, I would look at that, and here's what I know: I would have never gotten through that without Jesus. Like I know that on this side, like especially some of the things that would come after that, I never would have made it through it without him. But it was rough. I mean, I was in a rough place, and I thought like I'd been in rough places before, but this was a new level. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how long were you in lockdown?
Well, I would be there until I got my sentence, and then they sent me to my camp. So once they put that on you, you're in there for the long haul. And that could be a year, it could be months, it could be whatever. And there was this was like county jail is you're locked up in a pod, but this is you literally have like a 10-foot by 4-foot space that you're confined. Like I could stand up in the middle of that cell and put my arms out, and I couldn't just touch the wall. I couldn't even touch the walls. It was just a narrow, it was like a coffin almost. Like they got me, I'm dead. But in my shock, I was in shock, but I decided, whatever the God has started with me, I'm just going to choose to, I ain't got nothing else to do. I don't have nothing else. And there was nothing I could see in front of me that gave me hope, but his presence was there. I had my Bible. His presence was real. And then I felt like, the little, like the still small voice was just like, I just need you to keep trusting me. I just need you to keep believing. And I promise you, this is going to make sense. And I was like, oh, he's telling me it's going to make sense because I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life. So, just trying to figure it out. And I didn't have anybody to ask questions to. Like, I couldn't. My family was so devastated by this. Like, I didn't have anybody to say, what's happening? I don't know. How is this happening? I had Jesus to talk to. And then I had my friends, Patrick and Joanne Quillec, the chef that I work for.
Oh, the French chef.
Yeah, so we had stayed in constant contact. They were like my pen pals the whole time I was gone. And then after I came to faith in Jesus, like they became like my biggest...
So y'all were writing back and forth?
Letters, yeah. Okay. And they would send me books and stuff.
Okay.
But so I wrote them a letter, and I was actually like... I don't want to like write them letters to worry them, but like I need some answers. Like, how could this happen to me? Like, and now I've given my life to Jesus, and now they're telling me they're gonna lock me up forever. So, like, I was confused, and I needed some answers. Like, I didn't know where to navigate or what to do, and I wrote them a letter, and I think I got the letter back from them like 2 days later. Like, they wrote me right back.
Wow.
And she, there was a short note from Patrick, and then Joanne wrote me a long letter.
And Joanne is Patrick's wife.
Yes.
Okay.
And she was just like talking about her like faith journey. Like they had like 7 or 8 kids, and she had like 5 kids before she ever came into a relationship with Jesus, and it was like she never had any problems. And then the one child that she was pregnant with or gave birth to after, she had an experience with Jesus, some church or something where she went to told her, to believe for supernatural childbirth and do all these formula prayers and all this stuff. And so she was trying to do what they were telling her to do, but she ended up having complications and almost, I don't remember the details, but it was a very rough birth that she gave. And she was so confused by that, like, well, it's always been so easy to have babies, and now, I'm doing all the formulas that they're giving me. But she said she realized through that was that God is sovereign, and, we just have to trust him and not try to take matters into our own hands, was basically what she said. And then she said, this reminds me of the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. You're like Joseph. And she said, I encourage you to go find that and read it and ask God to open up some revelation for you in that. And up to that time, I've been reading the Bible, but I was pretty much camping out in the book of Proverbs, reading what Jesus said. I didn't really care about all the other stuff.
Give me another word for revelation. She said to ask God to give you some revelation.
Like to reveal something to you.
Okay.
Like she was hearing from God for me.
Right, to show you something.
Yeah, to show me something from that story. Mm-hmm. And so I went back and, I immediately cracked open my book of Genesis and went through and found the story of Joseph. And it was basically he was the son of Jacob. In the Old Testament, there was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then Jacob became Israel, and then Israel had 12 sons, and they became the 12 tribes of Israel.
Okay, let's stick with Joseph so we don't...
Well, Joseph was the number 11 son.
Oh, okay.
But see, I didn't understand all this at the time. I was just reading the story.
Yeah.
So in the story, his daddy loved him, apparently, more than the others. And he was a dreamer. And so he believed that he was special and that God had something great for his life. And he went out and told everybody about it. So he got himself in trouble. So first off, he was already daddy's favorite. And then his daddy made him like a rainbow robe or something that made everybody mad at him because he had special clothes then.
The coat of many colors?
Yeah, it was, yeah. So he had a dream, and he told his brothers, I had a dream last night. We was out gathering up wheat or some kind of grain in the field, and, we had all our sheaves together, and all y'all's sheaves bowed down and worshiped my sheave. And
What's a sheave?
It's like a thing that they, roll up wheat and then roll around it.
Okay.
Like a holder.
Okay.
And all y'all's bowed down to me. And so then they got mad, like, who do you think you are, you little brat,
Is that what they said?
We're not going. I'm paraphrasing.
I know.
We're not going to worship you. You ain't nobody. They didn't like him.
Yeah, that does come off as kind of cocky.
But then he kept having these dreams. So then, then later on he had a dream where he told all of them. He was like, yeah, all the 11 stars and the sun and moon bow down to me, to my star. And so his dad was like, son, what are you saying? You think me and your mother are going to bow down and like you're some kind of king or something like that? But he was like 16, 17. He didn't know. He was just popping his mouth off. But then his brothers couldn't stand him. And then apparently his dad would send out the 10 brothers, because he had a younger brother too, Benjamin, would send out the 10 brothers out to do all the work. And then he would stay home with mama and daddy. And then, but he would send Joseph out to check on him and come tell me what your brothers are doing. Does that make sense?
Like to spy on them.
Well, yeah, just to check up on, go. But in the Bible, it said, go give me a report of what they're doing. But basically that means go see what they're doing and go snitch on them, come back and tell me. So this one day they're out in the field, they're working, and they saw him coming. And my thing, I thought the reason they saw him coming was because he had on his rainbow coat, so they knew he was coming. And then they were like, we just need to get rid of this little punk kid. We just need to, we're tired of him.
Who happens to be our brother.
Yeah. Well, he was actually their half-brother.
Okay.
But so they decided they were going to do something to him, so they threw him in a pit. And the older brother was like, we can't, hurt him. He's our brother. And he went off and did something, went to have lunch or did something. And while he was gone, some traders were coming through, and they actually sold Joseph as a slave to these people for like a bag of silver or something. And then like he was, crying and begging and pleading, and they just basically sold him off into slavery. So here he is, a little dreamer kid, carried off and they ended up taking him into Egypt. And then when he got there, he got bought by like a captain of the guard, Potiphar, like somebody that was, high up in the government running stuff. And, Egypt was like the ruling power of the world at that time. And I mean, I understood history because I'd studied history. I just never really studied the Bible. I didn't really care about Bible stuff.
Right.
But Egypt was like the power at that time. And so this guy took him, made him a slave, took him home. And Joseph, like, kind of like me, like he would like adapt, figure it out, and work hard. It reminded me of myself when I was in the kitchen in prison in Florida.
Yeah.
Like, just do your best, work, you need something to do. So this captain noticed there was something different about him. Like everything I give him to do, he makes it better. So eventually, over the course of a couple years, he turned his whole household over to him. So Joseph was a slave in Egypt, but he was running this huge household of this like, I guess nowadays would be like a general in the army or something. Like,
okay.
Like a top person.
Yeah.
But
VIP.
Yeah. So Joseph was, doing his thing, rocking and rolling. But this Potiphar guy, he had a wife. And she got the hots for Joseph. And basically, like, she propositioned him, hey, let me get some of that good Hebrew stuff. And he said no.
I'd like to know if she actually said that.
Well, she came at him. Like, how women are, especially older women when they come after you. Lord,
do I know how women are?
Well
anyway, we digress. Go
digress.
ahead.
Basically, he told her no. He said, I can't do that. I can't do that to my master or to my God, because I'm not going to be doing all that. So she like cornered him one day in the house, and it was just him and her, and she was like basically like trying to rape him or something. So he like doubled up and got himself out of his robe and ran away. Like he fled.
He fled.
Yeah, but that old saying, hell has no fury like a woman scorned. They used to tell me that was in the Bible, but it's not in the Bible. But I'm pretty sure if it was, it had to come from this.
So basically, she wanted to have sex with him. She was coming on to him like very aggressively.
Yeah.
He was like refused and escaped, and she felt like an idiot.
Yes.
Or she
was the woman scorned. Like,
embarrassed.
She was in so
humiliated, maybe is a better word.
Yeah, so what she did was she started screaming and had everybody come, and she told him that he tried to rape her, which was not true. And when Potiphar found out, he threw Joseph in prison for that. So now Joseph had been a slave, now he was in prison. So while he was in prison, he like figured out how to make the best of it, handle business, do his best, and eventually he ended up running the prison, which is odd. But, this was like some 13, 14 years that passed by this time, and the king of Egypt...
So he was in prison that long? 13, 14 years?
I think it was 14 years the whole time, like being a slave and then being in prison.
Okay.
And the king of Egypt, which was called the Pharaoh, he took his bartender and his butler or baker and threw him in prison. And they were sad and dejected and bothered, and Joseph was trying to help them out. And they said they were having these bad dreams. So Joseph said, well, my God can help with the dreams, like if you tell me what the dreams are. So they told him his dreams, and Joseph basically told the baker guy or the chef or whatever he was, like, your dream's a bad dream. He's going to have your head chopped off in 2 days. But then he told the bartender, or the cupbearer, it was called the cupbearer, but I just figured like he was making like Egyptian martinis or something for him. He told the cupbearer, in 3 days, Pharaoh's going to restore you to your position. And please, please, when you get out of here, remember me. Like, I'm in here, I'm innocent, And everything happened just like Joseph said, but then the bartender forgot about him.
The bartender.
Or the cupbearer, excuse me. The cupbearer forgot about him. So as the story progressed, I was like really into the story. It was like, he's in a deep, dark mess, just kind of like me. The only parallel, though, the difference was he was innocent and I wasn't. So, that would that was, me trying to figure that out.
That was playing with your mind a little bit.
Yeah. So the Pharaoh started having bad dreams and nobody could tell him what they meant. And he was like pressuring all his people and his magicians and all his religious people and priests to help him, and nobody could help him. And then the bartender remembered Joseph and was like, hold up, there's this guy in prison that told me my dreams. And so it was like, well, go get him, go get him. So they went and got Joseph. They cleaned him up and brought him in front of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh told him the dream was, there were 7 cows, they were fat, and then these 7 skinny cows came and ate the cows. And the other dream is there's 7 like healthy wheat stalks, and then these 7 like gnarly, unhealthy wheat stalks come and suck them up. And so Joseph was like, I can't interpret dreams, but God can. And if you'll give me a second, I'll tell you what they mean. And he came back and he said, basically, Pharaoh, God's trying to warn you that you're going to have 7 great years coming up, and they're going to be the best years you've ever had in your land. Everything's going to be wonderful, but then you're going to have 7 years of famine that come after that, and those 7 years are going to be so bad that you're not even going to remember the 7 good years because of the havoc that's going to come on the earth. And he gave him a piece of advice. He said, if I were you, I would put somebody in charge of like all the grain and all the things, and I would save up out of the abundant years, save up for the not good years.
Prepare, basically.
Yeah, and like put a stockpile. And so Pharaoh said, all right, done. We're going to make you the man in charge of it. So they basically took Joseph out of prison and made him like the vice president of Egypt, which was a world power at the time. He was the prime minister, everything. He gave him everything. Fast forward, everything was going the way Joseph said it would go. He got married, had babies. He was the man. Everywhere he went, people bowed down to him, just like his dream he had when he was a kid. And then his brothers and his family were affected by the famine, and they came to Egypt to buy grain. And he looked up, and they were bowing down before him, just like he had dreamed, and begging him, because he had the power. And there's a lot to that story, but in the end, he revealed himself to them and told them, I'm Joseph. You sent me here to do evil to me. You meant harm to me, but God sent me here to do good and to say, basically, through all this, what you did evil to me is going to save the world, and it's going to save you. So he forgave them, and everything was all good and great. And, he brought his family over to Egypt, and he was like a king. And now his whole family was there with him. But what I got out of the story is that there was a process. And right after that, I found a scripture. It was in Mark's gospel, the 4th chapter, I believe, where Jesus said, and this was the words of Jesus, and this was what he gave me during that time, is that the kingdom of God is if a man should plant a seed in the ground and then leave it. And then he goes to sleep, gets up, rises night and day. He don't know how this works, but the seed sprouts, starts growing, it turns into a big plant, and then eventually it's a harvest. So basically what God was saying to me was, and it was so clear, I have you in a process, and I will make something beautiful out of your life if you will trust me. And it was so hard for me to like say, I was like, okay, but, all I see right now in front of me are white bars and these people telling me they're fixing to keep me locked up for the rest of my life. And and it was all around me. It wasn't just like the bars. it was like the atmosphere was like so thick in there you could cut it with a knife. It was just depression and just anxiety and just hopelessness. Like in that kind of situation, you would think it would be better if I was dead, you know,
For sure.
than to be stuck in this. I'd be better off dead. But I did. I believed. I was like, okay, you know, I trust you. I believe. I'll just, however long I got to be here, I'll just spend my time, you know, studying the Bible. I need to learn like your word and all that stuff. And it was I believe it was the third or fourth day, but it was like after I'd like surrendered, like, okay, whatever you want. I mean, whatever you want to do, I'll figure out. Just if you help me, please help me, because I don't know. You don't know. I mean, it's so sad. The people crying, like they would bring the phones down. The guys would be on the phone crying and weeping, and all through the night. And it was just. I mean, I think it's different. Like when you go to death row, like there's a death row. Like if you have a death sentence, and that's at Atmore. Well, there's one at West Jefferson too, but they actually, you know, you're on death row like 20, 30 years before you get executed. But they have them in like a pod where it's, most of those guys they know they have a death sentence. They've kind of processed it. So this at Kilby, these were people, it's fresh. So they got a life without parole sentence, and it's fresh. Like they haven't even processed the fact that I'm going to die in prison unless by some miracle something happens. And for me, I didn't have the sentence yet, but the expectation was there. The DA said that's what he was asking for, and that was, again, in the 90s, it was just so popular to just drop one of them down on you. I mean, it was like, I think some of that was political, but it was like the public liked it. They liked it. They want to get, you know, you going to be out here robbing people, we need to keep you locked up forever. But I had a weird, it was like a word that God gave me, like my third or fourth day. But it was after, like, I went through the process and, you know, I surrendered and I did. I believed. Like, what else I got to do? I mean, I ain't got no other options anyways. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's the truth. Like, if you're talking to me and I'm listening and you got something for me, I want it. Mm-hmm. It's hard to explain, like, when you say that God spoke to you. Like, I don't know that I've ever had, like, a voice come down from heaven and speak to me. But from the onset, before I ever gave my heart to Jesus, like, there was, like, a still small voice that told me, all you have to do is give up and ask me to come in. And I was like, okay, I give up. You know, when I got there, I give up, come in if this is real. And so it was kind of like another one of those experiences where he was just like, all I need you to do is just trust me. And I was like, okay, I give up. I trust you. I mean, I don't know what to do. And he gave me like a flash. It was like a memory flash. It was when I was in Bay County, which was in 1990. That would have been in 1993, so that would have been like 4 years before. And I was in with my public defender, who sucked. Like, she wasn't even a good public defender. She was just trying to, you know, check the box, go to prison, you know, whatever. But I was in a thing with her where they have these things called, it's the way they score you to sentence you. So in Florida, it's ultimately up to the judge, but they like score you out for what your crime calls for, and then if you have priors, it makes your score go up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like a credit score.
Yeah.
But
except you don't want your score to be high in
no,
this case.
This is a prison score.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
you want that score to be low.
You want your prison score to stay low, and plus mine were armed robbery, so mine was already high. But whatever your priors are will make your score go up. So when they were negotiating with my plea bargain with the district attorney in Bay County, there in Panama City, she had the papers laid out, and they scored me, and they bumped my score up because I had been convicted of battery on a law enforcement officer in Jefferson County. And she was like, oh, no, you can't use that. And they were like, what do you mean? And she said, technically that happened after he committed this crime, so you can't use that against him. You can't score him on that. And
I guess it's just one of those little rules that maybe some people don't know.
it was a technicality.
A technicality.
And
yeah.
it's a miracle that she knew, because she ain't even somebody that she didn't care about me. Like,
Yeah.
I was just another case that she needed to.
Yeah.
But she made a thing out of it, and then they were like, oh, let us come back. And then they came back and said, you're right. Like, we can't use that. Under the law, we can't use that against him because it happened after. Mm-hmm. So my score stayed low. They gave me my 6 years and went to prison. I was in that cell in this hopeless situation, and I remembered that. And I, like, my mind, I was like, hold up.
Hold on.
Everything that they were using to give me the 3 strikes you're out happened after the crime that I committed in Shelby County. It was my first crime. That was my, remember you asked me what was the first armed robbery you did, and I told you it was in Shelby County? Mm-hmm. That was my first crime. So technically under the law, they couldn't hold any of that against me. And I just was like, ain't no way. Ain't no way. You know,
Really quick, just so I'm like clear, why couldn't they hold that against you?
Because it happened after I committed the crime. So my first crime was in Shelby County.
Yeah.
In, I think it was November of 1993. The one in Montgomery was in December of 1993. The one I committed in Florida was in January of 1993. Oh, I'm sorry, 92. My first one was November 92, then December 92, then January 93, and then the battery on law enforcement officer in the Jefferson County, Florida, was in January 93. So all these things happened after that, so they couldn't use it against me in the scoring. They couldn't score it against me.
Okay.
So they couldn't count it against me. So 3 strikes you're out did not apply. But now I'm a little kid sitting in a lockdown at Kilby Correctional Facility facing life in prison without parole, and I have this information. And I'm like, Jesus, like, are you telling me this? Like, I mean, what do you want me to do? And I called for the phone. I called my mom. Got in touch with my lawyer, Mr. DeBardeleben.
DeBardeleben?
I don't know how to say his name. It was DeBardebel. It was a long name.
I think it's DeBardeleben. I've seen the
it
name.
May be. I don't know.
I went to high school with a DeBardeleben.
In Pensacola?
Yeah.
Well, maybe they're kin to the Montgomery DeBardelebens. DeBardelebens, whatever. Anyways, remember I told you this guy was for me. Remember? Mm-hmm. In Montgomery. I think he was a believer. He was like a real lawyer. He was a public defender, but he was like, it was a pro bono case. And I got in touch with him, and I told him that,
Yeah.
And he was like, let me get back with you. And then he got back with me like in a couple hours. He's like, you're right. We can't use that. We can't use that against you.
Wow.
And so the hopeless situation that I was in,
Wait, they let you out of
yeah, so I still had a 10-year sentence.
Yeah.
Like, I still had to do that, but that was a 10-year sentence plus time served. So, I mean, it was only like a 6-year sentence. And then with good time, it could be, I could have been out in a year.
Yeah, but going from thinking that you're more than likely going to be life without parole, you're going to die in there, to reversing that.
But here's the miracle of that. The lawyers didn't know that. They didn't know that. Jesus told me that.
Yeah.
I'm convinced. I have no doubt. They didn't know it. They were just
even back to the situation of the DA that you said sucked, that she knew that technicality.
Not DA, public defender.
Oh, public defender.
Yeah.
That wasn't good and was not for you and didn't care.
Yeah.
But she knew that technicality.
And she called him on it.
And called him on it, and you remembered that.
I don't think I remember, because I remember at the time I didn't care. I mean, I was like, okay, whatever.
It wasn't. It didn't have the
wasn't
weight,
a big deal.
As big a deal then as it was going to play out later.
But now, 4 or 5 years later, I'm sitting on almost death row. It's not death row, but it's life without parole row. And I remember that, and I know that God showed me that. I believe it was the very next day. Like, he filed some kind of motion. They reversed the curse, and then they came and let me out.
They reversed the curse.
So basically, Sweet Home Alabama,
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Sweet Home Alabama was trying to take James K. Jones out Like, we want you out. We want you to have an X behind your name. We want you to die in prison. But Jesus had a better plan for my life. And that part, I mean, that in itself was a miracle. And, I joke about the ooty booties. Like, people try to make God this super.
Let's give a very quick James K. Jones definition to the ooty booties.
Ooty booties. I've been saying that for a year. I picked that up from somewhere. It's just like where you over spiritualize everything.
Okay.
And God is a spirit, and He's real. Jesus is real. But everything ain't always. He's also very practical. He's here with me. He knows what I'm going through. He knew that I was locked up in a little coffin. They were fixing to send me to prison for the rest of my life, and He intervened. And He could have just busted the bars down like He did in the Bible. Sometimes He did that for people. But then I would have been on escape, and I would have never met you and got married.
I'm so thankful.
But no, it's just like He just gave me one little flash of a memory, one word. Like, remember this. Pow. Boom. It's over. It's over. Just like that.
That's crazy.
And, there's been so many times that's happened, stuff like that since then. But this one was like, that is extreme. That was an extreme, situation. But it did something in me that, I think it was like a week and a half maybe I was in there. It did something in me. Number one, I understood that there was a process. Like, this is a process, and it's going to be like this forever. And that has served me well over the last 25 years ago when that happened. It's because God always I'm always in a process. I mean, we're in a process right now.
Yeah.
But it's always for my good. It's always for His plan. It's always for His, He gets the credit and the glory. But
I would say it's always for our best.
It is for our best.
Not even just good. I mean, the best.
His steps, when He orders your steps, and if you belong to Him, He does. Even if you mess up, He's going to get you back on, where you need to be. It's kind of like a GPS. Like, I'm a late adopter on, technology. I didn't want a GPS because I thought they were stupid. But I thought, if you have a GPS and you put in the GPS and then you miss the turn, then you're screwed. But I realized, the first week or so I had a GPS was if you miss the turn, it reroutes you. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to get to your destination. You might have missed the easy turn, and you may have to make a U-turn and do whatever, but God is like that. He's got a plan. He's got a process. I might have made a mistake. I might have missed the turn, but He's going to reroute me, and I'm going to get back. Whatever His plan is, it's going to happen. And I would really need that later on to understand that and believe that. But the next season of my life, or the next, part of it, was pretty amazing because of that. Because I saw how...
you're still in prison, but you're saying it was
I'm still in prison, but I saw that not only am I known and I know Him, He knows me, and He's got a plan, and His plan is going to work out, and no matter what it looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate, really, story of, I think someone like me, that might be, a picture example that you might say, that you might use of, being in prison and there's nowhere to go. But, that was actually your real story. There was
no hope.
No hope.
There was nothing.
Besides being literally in prison.
Yeah. I was, 3 strikes, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Because I think we all feel that way in situations in our life, feeling like I am stuck and there is no way out of this. Like in different, whether it be financial or relationship or whatever, I think we can, even and I think most people can relate to, there's no way out. There's no way out. Whether I did it on my own or, something bad happened to me, whatever. So, but for you, it was the same thing, but there was literal bars, a physical space you could not get out.
Yeah, it was just very real. Well, I've told my story many times, but one of the things that's always stood out to me, when I tell it, especially in a secular setting, when I tell my story, I've had so many people come up to me and say...
Secular meaning non-Christian
not
people
in a church.
That don't believe the same way.
Yeah, not making it like a church thing. And we're not trying to make this podcast a church thing either.
No, it's just your story.
It's my story.
Our story.
But Jesus is His story. my
So
story.
sorry, you were saying that when you tell us in a secular setting.
There's always somebody that comes up to me afterwards and says, and it's usually somebody that doesn't look like they fit, like would even be impacted by my story. And they say, I've never been in prison, but I was in a prison of alcoholism. I mean, I remember one lady told me, I wasn't in prison like you, but I was in a prison that was built by liquor bottles because I was a hopeless alcoholic. Or I was in a prison of abuse in a relationship. Or I was in a prison of, financial ruin. Just all the things. Like, people always can relate to that. And it's true, it's the same. I mean,
We all have prisons we find ourselves in.
wherever we're stuck at, Jesus don't want us to stay stuck. He can unstick us. But we have to do it his way. I had to walk that out his way.
Yeah.
And, it's scary, but this is probably where we need to end this one.
Yes.
The next episode, I think, is pretty exciting. We'll talk about...
You're back to regular population.
Well, not just that. They didn't send me back to the dorm that looked like Sam's, the Wild 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 West. They actually moved me to a chapel dorm, we called it the chapel dorm because it was next to the chapel, but it was smaller. I would meet people there that were foundational in the rest of my life, even up to this day. Just my experiences with, church folks, especially the free world church people. Lord have mercy.
The free world.
The people that came in to do
Meaning
prison
the
ministry.
people not in prison.
People not in prison.
Yeah.
And then the Christian Brotherhood there, and then, baptism and all this, all this other stuff. And then there were some for real Jesus followers that I connected with. And but we'll talk about some of the crazy stuff I saw people do with Christianity and religion and all that stuff. And then there was another phenomenon that I didn't see coming that I'll just leave you hanging on that one.
That's exciting.
It's good stuff. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Anything to add?
Nope, but I'm sure I'll have some next time.
Well, we really appreciate the feedback we've been getting from you guys. It's very encouraging. Feel free, anything you think we need to do different or could do better, let us know.
All right, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the Straight Out of Prison podcast. For more exclusive content, head over to our website, timjones.co/podcast.
Yes, you can subscribe by clicking on the Become a Patron button, and that's going to get you access to our For Real Reel, which is very different than the highlight
Not the
reel.
highlight reel, it's
Some
the real
very
deal.
juicy content there.
Good stuff. Or you can look us up on Facebook and Instagram, Straight Out of Prison Podcast.
Yes, that takes the story to a whole new level where you can see some of the people that James talks about in his story and see some of the places that he's been. I've been loving it, and you will too.
Prison recipes.
Yeah, all the things.
Good stuff. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed this recipe. For more, look me up on Facebook and Instagram, and now TikTok. Look up Chef James K. Jones. And if you're getting anything out of these videos, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you never want to miss a recipe or anything I do, hit the little bell and you'll get notifications. Also, if you'd like to know me better, check out my podcast, the Straight Out of Prison Podcast. All right, so Cheese, you got them summertime haircuts.
You got some haircuts.
Summertime.